Welcome back. I'm Tara from Wild Bird Farm. I garden and flower farm here in Zone 5 in central Iowa. I thought it would be fun this year to show you a month-by-month peek at what is growing on my grow shelves. Now, I am in my home in a back bedroom here where we try and keep the heat a little bit lower. I think it varies anywhere from like 64 degrees in here up to the low 70s, depending a lot on how many lights I have on. And then I have a second space out in our shop, which we minimally heat. We're keeping it at 50 degrees right now. So I thought I'd show you both areas, some of which I am growing things for my plastic covered hoop house. But other things will be going out in the ground when it gets a little warmer out. And as you may have noticed from that first clip, we definitely have snow on the ground. Highs right now are in the 9-degree Fahrenheit range. It's getting down below 0 each evening, so definitely too cold to have anything planted outside. So as you're thinking about what you want to grow this season, if you are putting things directly in the ground, it might be a little bit early for some things. Perennials, I generally like to start a little bit sooner to get a little bit bigger plant to plant out. That often means that I have to pot up the plant a little bit, so move it from a smaller cell up to a larger pot before it's ready to go in the ground. So those are just a couple things to think about when you're making your garden plan. You're not too late. Just because I have my grow lights on doesn't mean it's time for everyone everywhere to have started. I am in Zone 5. We're in central Iowa, so we get cold winters and hot summers. This has been a low snowfall year, but generally we get quite a bit of snow as well. All right, so let's get started. We're just gonna walk shelf by shelf through. I'm gonna show you what I have growing, what it looks like, hopefully when I started it, if I wrote that on the tag, and then where I'm planning to plant it out. And then we will bundle up, head outside to the shop, and I will show you the same thing out there. If you aren't watching this in real time right after I put the video out, we are just past Valentine's Day. So we are in the middle of February. The first one here, I've got to get the name, is Baby Blue Eucalyptus. I think I started maybe 12 of these. I have 8. It's kind of hard with the lighting in here to see real well. I would say we have 7 doing pretty well, and then a tiny one that looks okay, but isn't real big yet. So these are slow growers. I'm not growing a lot of these this year. I've planted these out in the fields long enough to know that in just one growing season here in Zone 5, these are probably only going to get to knee height or maybe thigh height on me. I'm gonna get some good cuts, but it's an awful lot of work to start seeds in January to maybe harvest 6 or 8 stems per plant. Now the very first year I started even earlier. I started these, I think the very first year I started them the end of December. They did grow a little bit bigger that year, but my goal in growing these is to plant these in my unheated plastic hoop house and see if I can get them to overwinter. I have 2 out there last year planted in my smaller hoop house. But if I can get these to perennialize out there, or maybe just at least be short-term perennials, so I'm getting a little bit bigger plant and I can harvest more stems off of it, that's going to be the way I go. I probably, at least this season for sure, I'm not going to put seedlings or small plants outside. These are all going to go in the hoop house. Okay, second up on that shelf, I grabbed the temperature gauge. We're right at 70 here. These are the Barlow Columbine. Columbine takes a while to get germinating. I think it's been almost 20 days before I really saw much growth. And now I'm seeing quite a few seedlings. You can see, I anticipate a few more will pop up. I have some empty cells, especially there in the back, and I have a few cells with 2 in them. So we're going to let these grow for a bit, see if I can get some more germination, and then I will spread out those ones that are doubled up in the container. And these are in pretty small cells. They're decently deep though for how small they are, so I'm going to let these get a little bit bigger. I will probably have to pot them up. I grew a lot of columbine last year, and I'll make a video on it because I thought I had cleared a space for them. I had them planted, they were growing beautifully. And then since I wasn't harvesting last year, I didn't see any blooms last year. I let it get weedy with the type of grass here that just takes over. And I actually went out one nice day here this winter and looked, and even though it's died off, those roots of all that grass is still alive. So I think my plan is to find the starts, the columbine starts, dig them up and replant them in a new row that I've cleared. And then these will also go in that same area. And then I'm going to tarp off where all that grass is overgrown and just restart there. But when it gets warmer and I have a chance to get out and start working on that, I will bring you along. But that's just one garden oops that I did last year. Next up is our lupin, which we sowed together just a video or 2 back. This is the castle variety. If you are interested in growing that, go back because I talked a lot about growing lupin in there. Now this has had some weird germination for me. I have 2 of these 40 count flats. I have super good germination down here to the point where there's 2 and 3 per cell, so every single seed came up. But then I also have some gaps. So we're going to see if we can get more of these sprouted, but I might have to kind of combine cell trays because that one looks about the same as this one. But we started this just on February 2nd, so this is just 2 weeks in. And they are the cutest little seedlings when they get going. We also started Feverfew together, and that was started on February 3rd, and we did that in a 128 count tray, so a little bit smaller cell size. Really, really good germination. I see one little grass or something popping up, but I'll get close for you. Really good germination. Some of these have 2 or 3 seeds in there. I'm going to leave them because Feverfew can really fill out a row nicely, and it's not going to hurt for as long as these are in these cells to have a couple growing. If I do have empty cells and they're getting kind of big, I'll move them over, but I anticipate planting these out before my last frost, probably 2 to 3 weeks before. So they aren't very big right now, and I don't think they're going to get super big before they get planted out. But really happy with this germination. I believe this was mostly Tetra White. Now the next 2 trays, this one and the one that you see back there, these are both stock, and there's several varieties in here. These 2 trays are actually my second succession of stock. My other stock is out in the shop that we'll look at when we head out there. I didn't have as great of germination on these kinds as I had on my first round. This is Antique Pink and Champagne. And then I had more Antique Pink, and I think really the Antique Pink is the one that didn't germinate quite as well. And it could have been older seed or something. But then Quartet Marine, which is killing it. You can see just right here is the only Quartet Marine, and they're taller, and there's one in about every cell. So those are looking really nice. Now with stock, you have singles and doubles. I did a whole video on this about how you can select for the doubles if that's something you're interested in. You'll want to be doing it at this stage or even a little bit younger. I see one here with a fused cotyledon. That's going to end up being a single, where something with very nice separated petals will likely be a double. But head back, look at that video. It was just maybe a week or 2, well, it was 2 weeks ago when I did this sowing stock. And that is all I have inside. Now, eventually, when we get farther into March and April and I start on my warm season annuals, this is going to be full. In past years, I've definitely had this jam-packed full in February and March. But a lot of those things I was growing were perennials, and I kind of have those established. So I don't have as many seedlings started this year. All right, let's bundle up and we'll head outside. Made it up to the shop. If you've been in here with me before, you know it isn't pretty, but it's working well. It's doing its job. Let me grab the stock that we moved out here. This is the iron marine stock. Doing well, looking good, not minding this 50-degree temperature. And this is the iron pink. Also looking great. And again, this is the stock that we went through and selected some of the doubles for. So there's a video for that if you're interested. Now I haven't fertilized these at all. We are in a very cold spell, so I'm just going to make sure that they stay moist right now. I'm using that potting soil that I made. I did a video on that if you're interested in seeing what soil I'm using. It hasn't turned green at all. It's holding moisture pretty well. It's doing okay in a warmer climate in the house as well as out here so far. You know, I've only been using this for maybe a month or a little more, but doing good so far. These will be going out with the other stock in my unheated plastic covered tunnel. And then we also, the first thing we did this season was sow these sweet peas. And I have some Japanese varieties. I sowed, now these are the deeper cell trays, if you can see that. I got some perennials. Let's see what originally came in here. I got some sedum in here originally, some vernalized plugs, I think they call it. But these work great. They're working great for the sweet peas. The sweet peas have been out in this environment the entire time, so they really haven't seen any temperatures above 50 right now. But they're definitely putting on some growth. So just a few of the Japanese anemones here, mostly with 2 in a cell. And then I have some salmon colored ones down at the end. Not growing a lot of sweet peas here in our climate. I have found that the first harvest, you get pretty decent stem length. Nothing like what I see out in the Pacific Northwest. Maybe a foot long stem for my first harvest, but then they get shorter each time, and they take up a lot of space. So I will put up a vertical trellis in one of the hoops and grow these on in there. But they are just more for florists if they need something special for wedding work, or really just for me to enjoy, or if I have an order for a vase bouquet, I'll stick a couple in there for scent. But these are looking really good. I would say they're a little bit dry right now, so I am gonna water these when we're done here. I do like to have them wick up water from the bottom, but since these cells are deeper than normal, you kind of have to watch it, and sometimes you kind of have to water from the top too, just to make sure you're getting the full cell moist. Another thing that I did off video, because I'm not sure how it's gonna do, I overwintered some zonal geraniums. And I did that both by keeping a couple in a pot, just in this space the whole time. I did have them by a window and they kind of froze back. And then some I just cleaned the dirt off the roots and I put them in a paper bag. So like this one I say is doing pretty good. So I guess for a little bit more detail, I came out just last weekend and potted them up in that potting soil. I have them sitting, some are under the lights and some are near the lights, just trying to get acclimated, seeing if I can get some new growth. So this one to me is looking pretty good. I see some new green tips. This is one that doesn't look super yet, but I don't think it's dead. And then I have 5 more in addition to this. A couple don't look very good at all. But we're just gonna keep the soil moist and see if I can get some life back in them. And then I could take cuttings, so then I can use those for this year's plants and kind of consider these a mother plant. But since this is an experiment for me, I will follow up if things are working well, and we'll talk more about this as we get a little bit warmer and closer to planting out. And then the last thing that I don't think you can see right now, but I'll take you off the tripod. I did just 2 hydroponic trays of tulips. We started those together. I had a little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out, because it was just Valentine's Day. And there was tons of local flower farmers, as well as across the nation, across the pond, that did flowers for Valentine's Day, that forced tulips. And they all look so nice. And I decided not to do that this year, and I was a little jealous just this week. I appreciated not having the work of starting them right before Christmas like I did last year. But I am planning to have blooms starting very late March, hopefully the last week in March, all the way through between my hydroponics. I have a few tulips planted in the hoop house, and then things out in the field. So I'm giving myself a little bit more rest this year by not having lots of tulips to harvest right now for Valentine's Day, but it was a little tough not having any for myself. So let's look at how these are doing. I will be starting, I think I have 4 or 5 additional hydroponic trays that aren't being used right now, so I will be getting those started soon for kind of my target date of the very end of March. So I don't have my permanent setup yet, and I will need to get that done before I do more tulips, but right now I kind of just rigged some lights up here. Tulips don't need a ton of light. They could have light a little bit farther away than even what these are, but they're all getting light. They all look good. They're greening up. They came out kind of a pale tan brown color, and you can see that they're kind of turning the purple, and then they're getting more green. That's exactly what we want to see happening. I am just refreshing that water as needed, but these are doing pretty well. That wraps up what I have under lights in February here in Zone 5. Now, in very short order, I will be starting some perennial salvia to see if I can get some good-sized plants to go out in my landscape after the last frost. And then I'm also, for the first time, trying 2 different varieties of liatris or blazing star. And I know those like a cold period, so I really need to get going on those as well. I plan to do videos on those 2 things. So please like and subscribe and follow this journey into spring with me. Until next time.